How and why do adults develop psychologically? Do their changes follow some set course, or is their growth varied and unpredictable? Erik Erikson was one of the first psychologists to grapple with these questions. During the 1950s, he proposed his psychosocial theory of development.
Erik Erikson proposed that all people pass through 8 stages over the course of the life cycle. And if they don't complete the stages at the time that they ascend, that they're important, then all future development is somehow damaged, or it will be much more difficult for them to go through the next stage, to achieve the next development.
Stages 1 through 4 normally occur during childhood. During this time, the growing individual faces crises which offer an opportunity for learning trust, independence, initiative, and competence. At stage 5, adolescents must decide what to make of their lives. Until this decision is made, Erikson argues, the individual suffers an identity crisis. At stage 6, the individual either achieves intimacy by sharing and making commitments, or suffers isolation. At stage 7, individuals either learn to contribute to society or stagnate. And finally, at stage 8, people either learn to accept what they have made of their lives or fall into despair.
One of the things that is important about Erikson's contribution is that he was one of the very first psychologists to really take a developmental view beyond adolescence of how people change. And he also was one of the first people to identify that there were particular kinds of conflicts that people seem to go through at particular life stages.
I think that there are really 2 important limitations to Erikson's theory that we can talk about right now. The first is whether everybody goes through these stages in exactly the same order, or whether some people don't skip, whether some people don't regress, whether there are different patterns that are just as good for different kinds of people. And that brings up, more or less, the second issue, which is whether the theory is what's called ethnocentric. That is, wasn't Erikson awfully strongly influenced by the America of the 1950s, by the idea of marriage and his concept of intimacy and so on? So the question of whether there is this one universal pattern comes up again and again in talking about what the limitations of the theory might be.
For children, their lives are sort of driven by their biological development, and they tend to all go through many of the same stages, but adults really do not. And for adults, it makes a lot of sense to follow the big shifts in their life: the marriage, starting to live with somebody, breaking up with somebody, divorce, having children, losing a child, moving from one place to another. These transitions seem to catch people as they really develop their lives better than some lockstep set of developmental stages that everybody doesn't go through anymore.
Instead of thinking of adult development in terms of progressive stages, another approach focuses on transitions, life events that can cause us to change in some way. Starting out, parenthood, midlife assessment, and retirement are among the most significant transitions.
I graduated from college a little bit over a year ago, and about a month after that moved out of my parents' home, and I've been living here for about the last year and 3 months, supporting myself by waiting tables and teaching comedy traffic school. My eventual goal is to write for films or write novels, make the bulk of my income through writing.
If we talk about what happens when young people start out, that is, when they leave home, when they leave the nest, so to speak, there are so many things going on. There's the consolidation of the sense of identity, which began in adolescence, but is probably a continuing problem through young adulthood, and maybe for some people into middle age. There's the problem of establishing a love relationship, intimacy in a close relationship, of becoming financially independent, of choosing a vocation, of having a political ideology. There's a great deal that has to be settled in those first few years, and we're talking about a relatively short period.
My girlfriend, Melise, and I have been together for 6.5 years. She was going to college, and so for the first 4 years of these 6.5 years, she was living 3,000 miles away. When she came back, it was another period of adjustment because she was looking for a career, and I was graduating and moving out, and we were sort of both consumed with those concerns and looking to each other for support that we weren't always ready to give. Now, another year has gone by, and career and job-wise things have settled a little bit, and we find that now we've fallen into step with each other. We've taken some time out to recognize the other person's anxieties and try to be supportive as much as we can.
Developing a mature relationship, a mature love relationship in young adulthood is a real important task. And it's not easy always to define what a mature love relationship is. How do you know if you've got one? I think part of the definition has to do with having a good idea of what your own assets and liabilities are, and being able to share those with the other person, and feeling that the other person's assets and liabilities are really no better or worse than yours, and being able to support the growth and development of that other person.
The decision between Melise and I to move in together was something that took place over the course of probably the entire last year. When I told my parents, I was pretty surprised because of the moral tone it seemed to take, and it upset me quite a bit. I don't feel it's an immoral thing to do. And that was never stated, but it was implied, or at least that's the implication that I felt, and I sort of got the feeling that they were now viewing me as a person almost unworthy of their respect. That was the reaction that I got when first telling them. And then it also made me a little nervous because for the first time in my life, I felt that maybe that support system, that safety net, wouldn't be there anymore.
Part of what goes on during the period when a person is consolidating their sense of identity in young adulthood is that often the decisions they make for themselves about who they want to live with, where they want to work, what they want to be when they grow up, so to speak, are decisions that their parents might not agree with, or their parents may be quite opposed to. And so for the first time in their lives, they face real tough opposition from their parents, which they can continue as adults then to frame as their own decisions, and they don't have to knuckle under. But it causes a rift often between parent and child that's very difficult, or it takes a long time to heal.
I never seriously, even for an instant, considered not going ahead with my decision. My relationship with my parents is a little different now, at least in the way I perceive it. I almost feel that I've now got to sever to make good on this new move.
Those who write about moral development point out that the task of young adulthood is to incorporate inside yourself the values that you're going to live by, rather than delegating to others your values. In point of fact, although that may be a developmental task of early adulthood, many of us work all of our life on taking responsibility for our own values, I think.
I can't begin at this point making decisions based on, especially what my parents say. I have a very distinct feeling of the need to continue to move forward, even if it's just following my own instincts.
Well, Dash is our first and thus far only child. I was 32 when he was born. Tom was 31. And we'd been married 11 years. One of the things in Tom's and my relationship that we've always valued more than anything else, I think, is growth and change. So we wanted to have another person become a really close, integral part of our lives.
One of the things that I really didn't anticipate about being a parent, and I'm afraid it was naive, was just the 24-hour-a-day rigors of being a parent were not driven home until that first couple of weeks home with a baby, when you're on call all the time and you can never get enough sleep.
The biggest stress for us, aside from sleep, was not having enough time to talk. And so we just learned to pack more of it into shorter periods of time to sort of snatch them whenever they came up. The other main problem there is we don't have a support network, and you really begin to feel how important the extended family is when you have children, and to long for the days on the farm when grandmas and uncles and aunts and everybody lived all together. There was always an adult available, not necessarily the parents, to look after the kids, to give you a break.
There's a number of things that really seem to make a difference in terms of whether parents succeed and whether they enjoy the process of being a parent. One is support. If they lack friends and relatives and others to spell them off, to give them ideas, to make them know they're not crazy, they're not the only ones, that's a lot harder than if they have all those things. Another thing is their attitude, whether they came lusting after a child, wanting a child, this is a fulfillment of years of anticipation, or whether it's an inconvenience and a drag and a responsibility. That makes a lot of difference. And finally, it makes a difference on whether they're skilled and have experience with children, whether they have the craft of parenthood, or whether they have to learn it on the spot. And I suppose there's one last thing, and that's whether they have that inner strength that some people have and some don't, that inner flexibility that makes a person a good coper with new transitions of any kind.
We do spend a lot more of our free time doing things like playing. It's very important to us that he realizes that he's got two very loving parents that enjoy being with him, so that he doesn't get the sense that this is just something that we're doing out of a sense of duty. One of the things that having Dash has done is that I really feel somehow I feel the need to succeed now more than I ever have before. And I don't know whether that's a common feeling, but for me, I really would like to make him proud of me. I guess that he probably will be anyway, but it's just something that I've realized that is important, that makes me want to try even harder.
Often men and women experience parenting in different ways. And some psychologists say that sex roles are played out more traditionally after a child is born. Certainly a lot of men say that they feel like they have to work harder, they have to go out, they have to really do well now that they have a family. Some women feel more conflict about doing that. Others don't.
I think in the best of all possible worlds, in my utopia, I would work part-time so that I would have more time with Dash, but I don't think that I would be comfortable being, I'm one of the sorts of people who would probably go nuts being home all the time, because I like my work and my sense of myself through work. This is called folding.
Folding?
Yeah, I'm folding it in.
You're folding it?
I'm folding. I like to do things like cook with Dash because one of the things that I've learned through his nursery school is that even at his age and younger, it's really important to a child's self-esteem to be able to have jobs and help with things that are meaningful. I think having a child really does make you, or can make you, feel good about yourself. It certainly makes me feel good. I mean, there's something really incredible about having him just run up to you out of the blue and throw his arms around you and say, "I love you, Mom."
Parenting changes the way people see themselves, the way they perceive their lives, the range of emotions that they think that they can feel, how responsible they feel toward the next generation, and so on. It's not clear that parenting really changes personality. Personality may be more stable than that, but self-perception seems to be pretty strongly affected by parenthood.
I tend to place myself sort of more firmly in the universe having a child. I mean, it's made me rethink my relationship with my own mother, especially those times that you're in the middle of something and then I think, oh my God, I am my mother. I sound exactly like her. She said this to me. I mean, there are things that I understand now that I would never even have thought of before having a child of my own. There's just a depth of feeling there that I can now recognize in my mother, which, you know, at the age of 14 either embarrassed me or annoyed me or just irritated me. And now, you know, I very much understand how she feels about me, and I don't feel precisely the same way about her, but I feel that way about Dash.
And you really do feel much more attached, much more plugged in to the whole, you know, the whole race, frankly. You kind of begin to get an inkling of how it all works. I can't say that I have any understanding of a divine plan, but I sure do realize that kids really do enrich your life so much, and they make you think about different things, the way you would prefer the world to be rather than the way the world is, because you want this place that your kid is going to have to live in to be better than it is. And I think that's one of the things that you begin thinking about. You really become, I think, ideally less selfish.
I can't tell what thing it was that made me decide to go back to school. There were so many things that were going on at that time. The loss of my parents, the fact that my children were grown and out on their own, the fact that I was in an occupation that I didn't feel like I had a future with, maybe even midlife crisis. Any one of those things, or all of them, contributed to the decision to go ahead and go back to school.
Some people experience a midlife crisis. Well, sometime around 40, you look at your life and there's maybe much time behind you as there is ahead of you, and you begin to make some evaluations about the value of the things that you've been doing, or how it's been turning out, or whether it suits you and whether this is what you want to do the rest of your life. And that creates crisis for some people. For other people, they go through that time minimally disturbed by those kinds of questions. Other people are disturbed by those kinds of questions continually at all different times in their lives. But I think it's valid to say that in this society, with the kind of lifespan that we're leading, sometime around the middle of the lifespan, you will find yourself looking at your life and asking yourself, is this who I want to be? Is who I have become the person I want to continue to be for what's left to me?
I think in deciding to go back to school, I wanted to fill in the blanks. I wanted to know more about how things worked. I wanted to get a new perspective. I wanted to maybe look into different occupations and decide for myself now what I really, really wanted to do. What was going to give me an energy level that had been lost somewhere? What was going to excite me? What was it that I could find that would turn me on, that would make me happy again? One of the frightening things about making this decision to go back to school was not only risking my savings, but risking failure. If I were unable to complete the degree, what would that do to my sense of self? How would I feel if I didn't make it?
There are a great many things that are difficult about going back to school at middle age. But probably some of the most difficult things are dealing with issues like competency. There you are sitting in a classroom with a bunch of people who are 10 years younger than you are, who have just finished 1 year of school and now they're going on to the next year of school, and you've been out of school for 10 years. Maybe you haven't read anything that looks as difficult as this book that's assigned for this course in 15 years.
The support came from the group that I met with at the Women's Opportunity Center. Every time we met and got together, I was re-energized by the courage that these women were expressing and making these changes in their lives, so that it just energized me to go on with what I was doing.
For a woman in her 40s who is returning to college, one of the most important resources she can find are peers, people who are rebels like herself, who have taken that step and gone back to college, who can tell her about how to adequately perform in the new role, and to show her that she is not off out there by herself, that there are people like her who agree with her values and what she has chosen to do with her life.
I see the world in a different way than I did before. The pieces fit together. I understand now a lot better than I did, not completely, but a lot better than I did before, how things work, how things fit together. I feel entirely differently about myself. The difference is like night and day. Thinking back on the time that I was going to work and going through that period of discomfort and unhappiness to the point where I am now is like night and day. I'm excited. My energy level is up. I can't wait to go to class. I can't wait to even think about maybe the new occupation that I'm going to go into from here. All of it is just, it's great. Every step is enjoyable.
You know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, then your face...
When I went into retirement, I determined or felt that I would be open to all possibilities, and I just likened it to taking my mind and increasing the scope, opening the lens, so to speak, to a very, very wide angle. That no possibility, if it would be helpful, if it sounded right, if it sounded reasonable in any way at all, was to be eliminated. So I just approached the thing that it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to do something. And I just knew when the time came that I would know what that something or those somethings were going to be. And hopefully it would be something to do that was constructive and helpful for other people. Well, the DOVES program, DOVES being an acronym for Dedicated Older Volunteers in Educational Service, it's a volunteer program. It's appealing to folks like myself who are retired, who have the time to go and spend and share with the children, to provide a not only help to the teachers, but also to be supportive presence, encouraging presence, loving presence, caring presence, if you will. Right now, I volunteer 5 days a week.
If you look the word up in the dictionary, retirement, according to Webster, means to retreat, to go backwards, or to withdraw from life. And that's certainly been an experience that people for 50 years have kind of looked at it and, okay, I'm through, I'm finished. But that's not what is acceptable to people as we see them retiring. Today, more and more people are retiring in their early 50s, their mid-50s, certainly choosing 62 before 65. And these people are ready for what I define as the option years.
Nowadays, though, people are living longer. Many people are living into their 80s. As a matter of fact, the group that's expanding most in demographics is 85 and up. So now we're talking about a period of retirement that may extend beyond 20 years. And people don't want to sit still. Oftentimes people in their 60s are in good health, and they find they don't want to just sit at home or just go to the senior citizen center. So many of them will go on and take on part-time jobs or do volunteer work, and some will even develop whole new careers that are completely unrelated to things they've done before.
I worked for Lockheed for 36 and a half years. The last 11 and a half years I was there, I was in a executive position. I think just working with children has expanded my ability to love. It's expanded my tolerance and my patience. If they're having trouble with the writing or something like that, if there's something I can do to make them feel good, make it a little bit easier for them, and I feel a constant urge to be doing that. Better. We never have any problem coming up with a reason for living when we're working and we have careers and we're growing up and doing all these great things. We think reasons for living take care of themselves. As we get older, when we retire, it would seem important to have a reason for living. And I think the Doves program and the involvement that we have provides a reason for living. It provides a way, as I like to say, to give back. Give back the kindness that I've received through the years, give it back to children who are coming up. It's an opportunity to participate in the next generation, if you will, or the generation after that, I guess in my case it actually turns out to be.
We have to have a passion for getting out of bed in the morning. And as we get older, it becomes even more important because the passion has to be so intense that it's greater than the loss of a spouse, which is a common occurrence in retirement.
My wife died approximately 5 years after I retired. And one of the good things about my retirement was that when we were still together, when she had her health, during her bad times when she didn't have her health, and after she died, I had this structure of nice things I was doing that I could continue to do irrespective of whatever grief I was suffering or whatever adjustments were taking place in my life. I still had this nice, comfortable foundation of things I was doing every day that helped to carry me through.
Even people who go through the same transition at the same period may experience it quite differently, depending on their resources, depending on their personal belief system, depending on their style, depending on the surrounding circumstances. So I wouldn't want to leave the impression that there's one course, even through a given crisis or a given transition. There's probably as many courses as there are individual circumstances.
For all of us, adult life is filled with transitions and turning points. Some expected, others a matter of chance. All challenge us to grow and mature. Changes are a fact of life. The way we meet these changes defines our development as adults.